Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Well, people have been saying in my comments for quite some time now that Marvel is just turning into poorly written manga. And what do we have here today? Well, I have a story for you about Marvel wanting to produce manga. Now, I know that this story is kind of old, but I wanted to see how their strategy played out in trying to publish this before I did a video on it. Because they came out with this announcement about 3 months ago that they were going to start publishing these two titles that are manga-like comics. And what Marvel is trying to do is twofold. Number one, they're trying to break into the Chinese market with manga and introduce Marvel characters into that market, and at the same time take those same books, publish them in English so that they can get all of the North Americans who read manga to start to read Marvel comics. Now, they were going to do this in a very slow way. What they were looking to do was to take, as I understand it, characters from Chinese manga that were already established characters and to bring them into the Marvel Universe. And they were going to do so slowly. Now, they started by, again, I believe, introducing them into one of the Marvel fighting games. They put them as characters into those games. And after that, they were going to publish two titles, which are Swordmaster and Arrow, which is spelled like the candy bar. And they were going to publish them digitally in Chinese for the Chinese market. Now, this has occurred already about a month ago. And then they were going to take those two characters and slowly introduce them into the American comics. And they started by bringing them into one of the titles for War of the Realms, which is the Agents of Atlas. Now, I gotta say, other people have pointed this out, but the Age of Atlas comic, it is the most racist thing that Marvel could have ever done. The concept for this book is that all of the superheroes included on this team are Asians. But if you look at it, they're Asians from all over Asia. It's like they said to themselves, oh, it doesn't matter if you're Southeast Asian or Middle Eastern or from Japan or from China. Asians are Asians, right? And they'll all get together just fine and be friends with each other because they're all Asians. I mean, really, these are the people who are calling us racist all the time, and this is the kind of stuff they put out there. Anyways, so they put those two characters, Swordmaster and Arrow, into this Agents of Atlas book, and they're going to take those two titles, Swordmaster and Arrow, which they have already published the first issue of in Chinese, and they're going to publish them in English on the American market. And, as I said, their hope was to both draw in a Chinese market and to draw in the people who, in North America, read manga and introduce both of them to these Marvel characters, and then, eventually, just get them to buy Marvel comics. Now, I could see this coming from a mile away. This is a dumpster fire. I am calling it right now. This is a dumpster fire. Because I actually forgot that they were going to publish these in English. And the only reason that I remembered is because I saw two advertisements when I was reading Savage Avengers #2 for my 10-second comic review. And so I went online to see if they had already published them on the Chinese market. And they have, over a month ago. But I had to search to find anything on this. And I only found tiny little bits here and there. We're talking maybe 6 tweets, and none of them from Marvel, by the way. There's nothing on the Marvel Twitter site. There's nothing on Marvel.com about these two characters or their two books at all when I made this video, and this is just a month before they're about to come out. So I take it that these two comics, when they were published digitally in Chinese, did not do well at all, because I'm sure what they intended to do was publish them in Chinese, have all of these sales from the Chinese market to push in everybody's face and say, look how well this is doing in China. Look, we can publish manga, and we're going to publish it in English next month. But since you don't see anything like that at all, I'm assuming that this just crashed and burned in the Chinese market. And I think that it's very easy to see why this is a dumpster fire, why it's not going to work either in the Chinese market or in the American market. I mean, it's just obvious to me. Because, first of all, if you look at the Chinese market, these people, the Chinese people, they are very big nationalists, all right? And they just want Chinese stuff. You know, they do like American things, but the type of American things that they like are they'll say, in the tone of 90s action movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They like stereotypical American things. And they have to be stereotypical American things. You know, Johnny John Cowboy is what they want their American to be named when he's in a story. And you see these funny things coming out of China. I have no real connection to Asia in any way, but just watching some of the funny commercials that they put on Chinese television. Just to give you an example, they were trying to sell washing machines, and their tagline was, "How well it got out dirt." And what the little commercial actually was this black guy. He was about to do a wash in this new washing machine, but this Chinese woman comes up behind him as he's about to turn it on. She pushes him into the wash machine, closes the lid, and then turns it on so that he goes through an entire cycle. When the cycle stops, she opens up the lid, and he pops out as a Chinese man. Now, can you imagine anybody trying to put a commercial like that on North American television? I just could not even fathom anyone even trying to do that. But the thing is that, despite China being China, these people, they will not put up with this progressive-minded political correctness or anything of the kind. We already know this. Look at the sales figures for some of the Star Wars movies. They just bombed completely in China because they had this progressive message in them. That's why they bombed so poorly. And the movies that do well in China are things like The Meg, because again, you have Johnny John Cowboy there, because that movie was just a rehashing of the stereotypical 1990s action movie. And that's what they like. That's what they want. They expect everyone else to be stereotypically where they're from, and they got no problem with being stereotypically Chinese. And when I first heard about this happening, I thought to myself, well, this might actually be a good move on Marvel's part. And then, as I was doing my research for this video, one of the few things that I ran across was this article from the South China Morning Post. And they say in their article that Marvel editors are responsible for vetting the storylines of the Chinese manga editions that come out for these two titles. And as soon as I read that, I knew that this thing was going to bomb severely, because you can't take these quote-unquote progressive people who run Marvel Comics, have them vet storylines for a Chinese publication and expect it to turn out well. It's just not going to happen. And if you look at the flip side of this, it's not going to do any better in North America either. Now, I'm a person who reads manga. I'm a person who watches a lot of anime, actually. And when American companies try to make anime, it's just horrific. I can tell within the first 5 minutes of the first episode whether or not this was made by an American company or not. It is just so poorly done. There are a few that have come out that have their own tone, which don't seem exactly anime, but they're okay. But on the whole, they're just horrific compared to what you get out of China and Japan. And the thing is that the entire mindset that we can do this just as well as them, it all comes from their ideology once again. Because in their ideology, the core of their ideology is to strip man down to nothing but a beast. He's just a cog in a machine to them. And if people are just cogs in a machine, well, you can take one cog that was produced halfway around the world and put it into your machine here in North America, and it's going to work just fine. But the thing is, people are not cogs in machines, and no, you can't do that. And the same can be said for the products that people in specific regions make. And if you look at the manga that's coming out of Japan and China, no, you can't reproduce that in North America and have it be the same. Because it is distinctly a product of those two cultures. You can't lift it out of that culture and bring it into yours and think you can do the exact same thing. And it's like they're jumping into the manga market without even looking at the people who read manga or watch anime. Because most of those people, when they start reading manga or watching anime, they start to have this greater appreciation for the cultures that they came out of. They don't say to themselves, well, this is just an American thing, right? No, they know the difference, and they see the beauty in that difference. And all it would take is a simple look at the market for people in North America who read manga and watch anime to see this. And further, DC tried this twice over the last couple of years, and it failed spectacularly for DC. So how in the world is Marvel thinking they're going to do the exact same thing and come out on top? And besides that, briefly, I gotta say, I don't believe in any of this progressive nonsense, things like cultural appropriation. But I gotta ask the question, how can these people who are always going on about cultural appropriation, people who work for Marvel, because at one point C.B. Cebulski had written a manga-like storyline and he used a Japanese name to publish under, and they just jumped all over him when they found this out, because that was cultural appropriation, and yet they think they can take this genre of manga and just rip it out of the culture that they find it in, plop it in North America, and it's just going to work exactly the same. How in the world can these people who are always going on about cultural appropriation not see this as cultural appropriation? Anyway, one of the main reasons why I wanted to cover this was my takeaway from what I saw happening here. You see Marvel, and they're ready to jump into a market where there is only the smallest sliver of a chance that they're going to make any headway at all. That's what they're willing to do. They're ready to jump headfirst into this market, which really it looks like they have no clue about. And I said to myself, okay, look, I understand that they want to make money again. I understand that they want their comics to sell well again. But the point is that all they have to do to get their comics to sell well and to make money is to publish American comics the way that American comics used to be published when they sold well. But the thing is that they're not going to do that. They're not even going to consider doing that. They're ready to jump into this other market, which they have slim to no chance of actually succeeding in. They're ready to do that before they'll even consider making comics the way that traditionally American comics are made. Because the comic industry is like a drowning man right now. They're in the middle of the ocean and they're drowning. And there's a life preserver right there, right next to them, about a foot away. And that life preserver has been thrown to them by the people in North America who read comics. And that life preserver is the statement, all you gotta do is make comics the way we like comics. All you gotta do is make comics the way that traditional American comics were made. All you gotta do is go back to that time when comics sold well and make those kinds of comics. That life preserver is sitting right there for you. Just grab it and you will do well. And yet this industry turns its back on that. This industry, it would rather turn around and stare off into the distant ocean, hoping that someone or something else is going to save it. But all they're doing is giving themselves a little bit more time to tread water before they drown. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.